this whole unit is about solving quadratic equations, and we've talked about how you can graph, but graphing only works when you can see the integers that it's going through on the x-axis, or if estimating is okay. We've talked about factoring. Factoring is really convenient when it's factorable. We've talked about using square roots. So we can use it when it's given to us in vertex form, or if we don't have a middle term. Okay? We've spent the last couple days talking about completing the square, which works best when A is 1 and B is even. So what do we do when we can't use any of these four options? Well, it's called the quadratic formula, and this is what it looks like. But before we get here, let's talk about how we get to the quadratic formula. So here we start with a random quadratic, and we're going to look at it just like it is in standard form. And this is going to show us how we get the quadratic formula that we get. If I was to complete the square, my first step would be what? To get A to be 1. So what we do there is we divide everything by 4. Over here, this doesn't say 4, it says A. So I'd want everything to be divided by A. So what I end up with is x squared plus 9/4 x minus 1/4 equals 0. X squared plus b over a x plus c over a equals 0. In completing the square, my next step to get this value onto the other side. So in this case, alright, so I'm going to make sure everything stays lined up. So x squared plus 9/4 x doesn't change. I'm going to leave a little space, and 1/4 goes right here. X squared plus b over a x, and I'm going to leave a little space, equals negative c over a. So remember, to complete the square, we take half of this. So 9/4, half of that equals, and I'm going to put that over here, 9/8. I'm just going to leave that. I know that I'm going to have to square that value, but I'm just going to leave 9/8. I'm going to put squared right here. Okay. 9 squared is 81, and 8 squared is 64. So b over a, well, 1/2 times b over a is b over 2a, and this would have to be squared. In that case, it's, well, b squared over 2 squared is 4, a squared. Take a moment, rewind, watch that part again if you're not sure where those values came from. Because the first thing we're going to do is we're going to factor over here. So when we factor, we get x plus, remember half of 9/4 was 9/8. We're going to simplify over here. 1/4, if I'm going to make it out of 64, because when we're adding fractions, you have to have a common denominator. 1/4 is 16/64. Okay, so 16 plus 81 is 97. And I know that you're like, why are these numbers so difficult? We would never use completing the square to do this problem. Well, it's difficult because we're using a lot of variables over here. We're doing a literal equation, And we definitely want to make it look as much like that as possible so we can understand where we're going here. So factoring here, half of b over a was b over 2a. And over here, the denominator is 4a squared, and this one is just a. So in order to get that to match, here, I'll come up here, I need to have negative c over a. I need it to have a denominator of 4a squared, so what would I multiply it by? 4a on the top and the bottom. So multiplying it by 1, so I'm not changing the value. So this is negative 4ac over 4a squared. Okay. We're adding b squared over 4a squared. Now, bear with me. Instead of writing negative 4ac plus b squared, I'm going to write my b squared first because I don't like to have a leading negative if I don't have to. My next step over here, back over here, in completing the square would be to take the square root. And I can take the square root of 64, but I can't take the square root of 97. That's okay because we're still dealing with common denominators over here. So let's do this side. Ooh. Well, x plus b over 2a equals, I cannot take the square root of the numerator right here because of that minus sign. But at least the denominator, I can take the square root of 4. And the square root of a squared is a. We can see to get x by itself, I have to subtract 9/8 from both sides. Negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 97. And they're both over 8, so I can write them all over 8. In this case, negative b, okay, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And then since they're both over 2a, I can write all over 2a. And this, my friends, is the quadratic formula. Okay. So when we're looking at the quadratic formula, which is on your formula chart, and I will always give it to you, and you can write this down and use it over and over again, it's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You can find lots of people singing songs about it on YouTube, so if that's something you're interested in to help you memorize it, go right ahead.